Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report, the first podcast to bring you the local fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I'm Butch Theory. I'm joined today with my trusty co-host, Captain Joe Baya. How we doing today, Joe?
Man, I'm ready for this rain to quit, dude. What's up? What's up with this weather?
It was so great for a few days there, and then just now it's hot and muggy and nasty outside again.
It is, but we got this cold front pushing in, and man, it's been some good fishing. We got some real cool reports coming today. I'm excited about all those reports. You going to get out after them this weekend, or are you going to go chase the pine goats?
Man, I don't know. You tell me. I'm coming to visit you, so.
Well,
what we're going to do, Captain.
I don't know. If I can wake you up in the morning, maybe we'll try to do a little of both. I don't know. We'll see.
You know how I like to sleep in, man. Morning hunts are rough. Well, unfortunately, we don't have an offshore trip to talk about. We had to cancel our trip on the Escape. It was about 8-foot seas all weekend, so that stinks.
Yeah, it looked like it cleared up a little bit when we would have been coming in, and boy, the fishing looked like it heated up. But, one of the things I did get to test out on that previous trip is a device called the Spot X, and you and I played with it a little bit back and forth. I think most people are familiar with Spot, and they're the the GPS kind of remote warning system that allows you to keep in touch no matter where you are. But they've come out with a two-way messenger that Bluetooths to your phone, and we were playing with that thing. I was texting you when we were 80 miles offshore, and we were texting back and forth just like we were normal. That's a pretty cool deal. And the thing I liked about it was sat phones are really expensive when it comes to buying minutes. This allowed me to stay in contact with my wife, stay in contact with people back on land. And I think they've got, plans starting at like $12 a month, something
Super
like that.
cheap.
Yeah. If you spend a lot of time off, like any kind of outdoors, whether you're doing backcountry stuff or even just being at a hunting camp, a lot of times you don't have a good signal.
At my camp,
you think about
I really have good Verizon cell at my camp, so that'd be really nice to have just in your pack, just for peace of mind.
That's right. And you can turn it on, turn it off. So if you're just a fisherman, just a hunter, or maybe you're just doing it 6 months out of the year or something, really inexpensive, chuck that sucker in your backpack or in your boat bag, and you're in good shape if you need to be. I was pretty impressed with that unit. I did give them a little bit of feedback on how I thought they could improve it. One of the things you and I were talking about, it'd be cool if you could send pictures with it. And I did hear that I think they're working on that. But yeah, it's called the Spot X.
One thing I thought was really cool on it is whenever you were texting me, man, we're smashing the grouper, it sent me your GPS coordinates. So I got that number.
Wait a minute. Don't say that. Oh, no. Well, good thing the guy I was with is your brother. You probably could have got him anyway. But
that's right. That's true.
Yeah, man. Well, what else is new? I know we got some closures coming up November 1st. What we got?
Yeah, Flounder is going to be closed the whole month of November for the spawning.
Man, you posted that on Facebook, and it was like you had just kicked somebody's dog. And I guess I understand it because November is historically one of the best months for flounder fishing. But unless you've been under a rock, flounder fishing's been pretty tough in the coastal Alabama area.
I don't see how you can argue with it, man.
Well, it's not even about arguing with it. It came from anglers. Those regulations came at the recommendation of anglers, and there were a multitude of public meetings to voice your concerns and speak up, for this and that. But that's when those fish are spawning, and that's when they're stacked up they're the easiest to catch in great numbers. I don't know. You're never going to have a decision that's popular with everybody, but I haven't talked to anyone who would say that flounder fishing is better than it has been historically. They all say it's down.
And it's been that way I can remember talking about this 2 or 3 years ago. I can definitely remember talking about this whenever we started this thing almost 2 years ago. We definitely were talking about that then. So I agree with that. I wonder how long we need to get somebody on here smarter than us. Like, I wonder how long it'll take to see those benefits from just a month closure in the spawning season.
I don't know. It'd be a good question for Crystal. It'd be a good question for Scott Bannon. Talk to those guys, and next time we're on, don't let me forget. And
for sure,
man, we should read some of these mean Facebook comments, or mean tweets. Remember mean tweets on Jimmy Kimmel? Always crack me up. All right, buddy. Well, even though we didn't get to go, Bluewater is hot right now, man. They are catching some giant tuna. White marlin bite is going off. Blue marlin bite's going off. Here we are, pretty much November 1st. You don't think about Bluewater fishing, but like we've been saying all year, this is some of the best fishing of the year. Let's go down and talk to Captain Devin Potts and see how his weekend went. What you say, Captain Devin? How'd your weekend go, man?
Oh man, it was awesome. It was awesome. Finally had a couple of decent days, Sunday and Monday, and got a chance to get out there on Monday and chase after them a little bit. And several boats that got out there on Sunday, Monday, and a lot of good fishing going on right now.
We talked with Angelo Depaola a little bit earlier, and he told us some really, really good reports on yellowfin tuna. Looks like a lot of big fish in country right now. What did you guys find?
Yeah, man, we ended up catching a couple of white marlins and jumped off a blue one and caught a tuna fish.
Big white marlin.
But yeah, man, some nice white marlins and a couple other boats that caught them said they were healthy ones too. So I don't know if that has anything to do with the time of year or whatever, or maybe the grade of fish is a little bit bigger now, obviously, than earlier, but we'll take it, Bigger ones are a little easier to hook, so.
Well, and just any is a major improvement over what the summer season was like.
Oh God, yeah, it's so nice. And the tuna fishing, man, a lot of reports. Like Angelo was saying, I think the Born to Run had like 5 or 6 giant yellowfins. I know another boat that had a box full. I say box full, probably 5 or 6, 80 to 100 pounders. And then, I mean, it seems like everybody that's going is having all they want.
Man, if
getting their shots.
If you have been fishing for a long time and have not made it into blue water yet to chase after big yellowfin tuna, I don't think I'll ever get to the point where it doesn't excite me to see one of those things come over the side. I mean, they're just so solid and so fast and so strong.
There's sheer power, man.
Yeah.
And those things, they're
awesome.
tough. And
they don't give up.
I think for me, and I haven't really experienced the swordfish, the big swordfish fight, but they say that from everything I've been told, it's been like those things like can really, 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 like pound for pound, they're probably the most heaviest. They put all this insane amount of drag on them and can't turn them. And you hear all these big, stories of these big fish. So yeah, there's no telling. I mean, giant tunas, big swordfish, I mean, all that stuff. You never know what you're going to get into, and you never know what's going to end up on the other end of the line sometimes. And with everything out there, it's fun. I'm sure it can get interesting. So,
well, you guys were 2 for 2 on white marlin, 0 for 1 on a blue marlin. Caught yourself a nice yellowfin. Were y'all live baiting, trolling? What was your tactic?
We were live baiting a little bit, but there were some other boats around there trolling that did just as good. I mean, the fishing seemed to be kind of scattered out. I mean, there was reports. One boat went Sunday to the 131 hole nipple area and caught like 1 for 2 on white marlins, and another boat was 1 for 2 on Monday and fished around the elbow 131 hole area. But yeah, we caught a couple of nice ones, and it's kind of the first time I've caught white marlin on a smaller sized blackfin, but we'll take it. It was pretty interesting, pretty fun, and definitely exciting to catch them. So,
Devin, talk to me a little bit about catching these smaller blackfins. And when I say smaller, give everybody a size range. What type of blackfin do y'all look for, and what do you do to go about targeting?
Normally we fish with any size really, but the bigger. Right now there's a bunch of different variety of bait out there just because a lot of the bait moves up on the shelf this time of year. And so right now there's some smaller blackfins, but on average, I would say, 5 to 7 pounds or 5 to 8 pounds or anywhere up to 10 pounds is really throughout the summertime. That's a pretty normal bait. You'll hear sometimes we'll refer to the little bitty ones as gumdrops, little bitty gumdrop blackfin. So, but we have had a plethora of those this fall and late summer. So they have showed up at the rigs, and it seems like everywhere you go, the ones that are, 2 to 3 pounds or, those are the some of the smallest ones I think that we fish with, but we've done great with just about every size that they make. So,
what about blue water, Devin? Do you guys run into blue water just south of here, or how far was that?
Yep, blue water was not very far. I think the entire edge out there is in for the most part, blue water.
That's good to
all
hear.
the rigs are in blue water. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's good to hear you don't have to go very far. That kind of brings us to our offshore tip this week. It's sponsored by Hilton's Offshore Charts. It's so important to know where blue water is and to be able to find some of these upwellings and understand where rips are before you head out. Just last week, we were talking with Thomas Hilton. He gave us a little forecast of what was out there, and he talked all about the 131 hole and over around the elbow and the nipple, that there was an upwelling out there. And to hear you say it sounds like that's where a lot of these fish are being caught. So if you want to find the highest resolution images to not only know where to go, but where not to go, you need to get over to hiltonsoffshore.com and check out Hilton's Real-Time Navigator. They've got a really easy-to-use interface and excellent customer service. If you pick up the phone and call them, typically Thomas is the one that's going to answer, and he can answer just about any question you've got. They've got a ton of features to help you know what's going on in blue water before you get there. Devin, what's the offshore tip this week?
What did we say earlier? It wasn't really a tip, more or less a technique. I would say that you need to, this time of year, the wahoos are showing up, and I think keeping a wahoo bait in the spread would be a good tip, because you never know, that could make a slow day of fishing into could bail you out of a bomb out, and also if you're fishing, and you're in the center console, we were talking earlier about circle hooks and fishing, dead bait, chin weighted ballyhoo, and circle hooks. If you're trying to use a circle hook and you're kind of a novice at it, then you may want to use a J hook, or if you're fishing if you don't have a tall vantage point or bridge boat to fish out of, where you can see the fish coming, so you don't get beat to the rod, so the fish doesn't eat the bait before you get a chance to drop it back to them and engage the fish. I would say if you're fishing on the center console, use a J hook ballyhoo combo too, so you can those bites don't surprise you, and you can actually have a chance of catching them.
That's
odds go.
That's a great point, Devin. You're talking about, visibility is what you're talking about. If you've got a tower, typically you can see a fish
come up behind that bait,
and have enough time to communicate down to the deck and say, left flat or left rigger.
That's right.
Either drop a bait back to them. If you don't have that visibility, you're saying go to a J hook. Now, here's my question for you.
That's right.
When you go to that J hook and you do see a fish,
I'm getting fired up. I feel like I'm there.
Yeah.
Whew, so freak out.
So
fired up. I saw him back there.
There he is. Down and tight yet?
Yeah. When you do see that fish and you're pulling J hooks, do you still want to drop that bait to him, or do you want to let rod holder do the work?
6 ways, half a dozen another. It all depends on the bite. I guess if you're fishing and the bite's aggressive, and I would drop it back to them. Just because you're fishing a meat bait, you're not really fishing a lure where the hook is kind of free. I would definitely drop it back and try to ensure he gets it back there in the good part of the mouth,
in the jowl.
But like you say, if you get beat to the rod and you're fishing circle hooks, man, if the fish beats you to the rod, then your chances of catching that fish on a circle hook, they drop by. I'd say if you got a 50-50 shot of hooking them and catching them.
So what you're saying is, when you're white marlin fishing, somebody's got to be paying attention at all times.
Somebody, because man, how y'all have been, those things are hard to hook, and
they are.
Man, it's they'll make you question yourself and your religion and everything else sometimes, because some days you'll really get them, and some days you won't catch any of them, and you're like, man, they bit good. I saw the bite, But it's just kind of standard for a white marlin.
That's the nature of the beast for sure.
But I would definitely say if you're comfortable using a circle hook and you fish somewhere like if you've been on a charter in Costa Rica or somewhere like that where they get a lot of shots and you feel like you could do it, then it's a really good way to do it. Not only is it tournament legal and it gets you ready for that kind of fishing, it's also really cool because the fish jumps. There's no jump. Really, rarely ever do you jump one off. Rarely ever do you, you're either on or you're not. And, after years of jumping them off, I'm like, man, I'll just bite the bullet and take my time and learn to use a circle hook. And it's paid off really good for us just because there's a lot of variables that you can't control. And especially when the fish goes to jumping and angle of the line and this, that, and other. I mean, it just kind of takes a lot of that anxiety out. You can have a person on the reel that's never caught one before that may let the line get slack or something. And it's like, oh God, reel, everybody's yelling at them, and it's like, well, if you're on a circle hook, it really, yeah, it matters, but it really does. You got him.
You don't want that belly, but it's not just going to come. It's not just going to
fall out of his mouth.
Out. Yeah.
Right.
Now, Devin, let me ask you this about your circle hook style. So, I'm just trying to paint the picture here. Let's say you're trolling along at 9 knots and you get a white marlin up in your spread. He's right behind your bait. You drop a circle hook, ballyhoo back to him, and you feel that fish take that bait. You feel him come up and get it.
Right. You feel him when he eats it, and then you'll feel him. A lot of times a fish will eat it, and then he'll turn and catch another gear and run to kind of get it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you'll that's know, when you'll feel that rod load up, and you'll have him on at that point. But I see a lot of times, the first few times somebody does it, and of course this wasn't me that I'm talking about.
Of course not.
But
never.
Other people, of course, they'd feel that fish take that bait, and they either gave them too much line right off the bat, or they tried to reel it like you would if you were bottom fishing or something like that. What do you do? What do you recommend people do once they feel that fish take that bait? What do you tell them to do?
If you're in the rigger, okay, if you're getting bit and you're in the rigger, all right, and you see the fish, the captain or somebody in the tower goes, hey, get ready on the right long, all right? You stand by and you get ready. And we like to use, when I'm fishing, I like to use those little kite clips, a little, blackout, the blacks, kite clips, a little, they break away really easy. So whenever you get, you hold, we'll pick the rod up and, pick the rod up, hold your rod tip up in the air with a reel and free spool and your thumb on the line. And when you feel him bite, like a lot of times I won't tell my guys, all right, he's biting you right now, or I won't say anything, because so many times what I'm thinking I see as a bite is they're not getting bit. So if they drop back on my call, then they're not really, they may drop back to nothing. So they need to really feel it.
That's right.
I've learned to be quiet and just let them feel it and let them kind of go on their own feel. And that's a lot better, because a lot of times they'll swat and miss. And if they miss, they'll always they always will. Most of the time they'll come back and get it. But no, once we get the fish and you're sure you're bit, some people count to 3 Mississippi. Some people count to 5 Mississippi. Some people do whatever. I just say, if that line's peeling off of there and if the cat, a lot of times too, like if you're a tower guy or your guy on the bridge or whatever can see the fish, if he's still swimming behind the teaser, or if he's still swimming with you, if he ate it, like don't come tight yet. Just keep free spooling him, and eventually the belly and the line will put enough drag on your hook set to run the line down his lateral line kind of, and he'll feel that and spin out, and there's enough drag in the line to hook him. Sure. It doesn't take a whole lot to set to get the circle hook, but you want to engage that fish just as slowly as you can and let that rod tip kind of load up that rigger. And when the rigger breaks, just kind of let the rod tip load up, let your rod kind of hook them for you, and keep that drag super light. You can always add drag. It's always, you can always add plenty of drag. And especially if you're whitey fishing, you don't need a whole lot. We fish roughly 5 to 8 pounds on 30-pound stuff, and it's fun. It's really, really fun. Fun way to hook them, fun way to fish. So.
Well, that's great advice, man. Well, you got any new listings this week you want to talk about?
We do. We've got a new old listing. We've had this boat listed for quite a while, and it's a 2017 41 Sea Hunter, and the seller bought it with roughly about 80 hours on it. It was kind of a demo. Well, it was the owner of Sea Hunter Boats. It was his boat, and this guy bought it, and we have sold him a express type boat, because kind of got into a little bit different type of fishing once you get away from the center console. So there's nothing wrong with the boat. The boat's a great boat. Still has Yamaha warranties and boat and Sea Hunter warranties, I believe. And it needs a new home big time. So if anybody is interested in a great boat, comes with a trailer, all service records for days. You know, it's got air conditioning up under the console, so all the bed, whatever the big bunk down there, it's all air conditioned. If you want to get out of the heat a little bit, and yeah, it's just a super super cool boat and a nice platform to fish on. If anybody's interested, just give me a jingle at 251-379-6005, and man, we're ready for this one to find a new home. This one's been on the market for a while. We've had a couple of contracts on it, and nothing. For whatever reason, the people have moved on to something else, and nothing's been wrong with the boat. And the reason about that, they just have other plans or didn't come down to look at it, whatever the case may be. But anyway, love to show it to somebody if anybody's interested. So.
Cool deal. Well, Devin, thanks for the great report, man. We always enjoy having you on, and I appreciate you being a part of the podcast. I know people enjoy your tutelage. We got a really cool
yes.
past week, and just talking about how much they enjoyed hearing you. And we certainly enjoy hearing from you as well. We'll look forward to talking to you again soon, buddy.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you guys, and look forward to doing it again.
Thanks, Captain Devin.
Butch, I got to be honest here, man. Like the first 5 billfish, I think, that ever came up behind the baits when I was on the back deck, I totally blew it.
If you've never seen it before, man, it's a shock and awe situation for sure. Pretty much just freeze. Did you freeze?
No, I didn't freeze. There was like this godlike figure up in the tower was screaming at me. He was yelling at me that there was a fish there, that I could see the fish very clearly. And I knew the fish was there, but he also felt the need to scream at me and tell me that the fish was there. I just got a little nervous is all I can really put it. I think in most cases, I did the opposite of what Devin was saying. It's like once I felt that fish, as soon as I felt that fish take that bait, I slammed that drag up. I mean, I slammed it into gear like he's got to have it, because I felt like I'm going 9 knots. If I feel the tug, then surely he's got it, right? That was my thought process in my head. And it took me a long time to get comfortable. It's kind of like hitting a baseball, you just got to get comfortable in the batter's box. Yeah. Which I was never really good at that either. So
you still can't do, but we'll teach you how to catch a white marlin, buddy. I got you.
I've caught them. I've done it. Pictures to prove it. Where are we going next?
Man, let's head on down and see what the Marshals and Mississippi Sound's up to. Captain Bobby Abruscato. How we doing, Captain Bobby?
Joe, if it'd make you feel any better, I would have froze when I saw billfish come up behind the boat too. Especially if I was in Grand Bay in the Mississippi Sound, I think I would really have froze.
That's right.
Does that make you feel any better, man?
Makes me feel great, Bobby. I appreciate that. Marshall and Mississippi Sound, that's the nickname we've bestowed upon you, but I don't know. You might be like the admiral of the Arlington Flats this time of year. Where you been?
And places in between, everywhere in between lately. So, man, I've kind of been, from the lower end of the Delta all the way around to the Mississippi line, just kind of depending on the conditions. And, the good news is the fishing's been great. I've had some phenomenal trips since we talked last over the last couple of weeks, had some really, really good trips, big numbers of fish, some decent sized fish, lots of redfish mixed in and not just little bitty rat reds. We've been just, without even targeting them, doing our trout fishing. There's some really nice slot-sized fish, kind of roaming around. And I think that's a product of, how much bait is available at the mouths of these rivers and the flats and that sort of thing. We had an instance the other day. I don't think we've talked since I was told. I wish I'd have videoed this. It was really cool. I turned the trolling motor on just to kind of adjust the drift of the boat. And it stirred up a little bit of the bottom. And I mean, 50, 75 shrimp just showered right around the boat.
Wow.
There was that many shrimp around the boat, and we were using all artificial bait. And I was, several of the fish we caught, and taking them off, they had shrimp whiskers, coming out of their mouth, and we were catching them on artificial bait. So that told me we were around a huge number of shrimp, and that's what's going on. You're really all the way down the bay and through the Sound right now. There's just a lot of shrimp on the move. There's a lot of shrimp, transitioning in and out of these rivers, and that's going to, that you're going to see a pretty big change in that coming up here this weekend when we get this cold blast that we're getting ready to get. But that's kind of what I've been keying on my trips. And, where I've gone, it's kind of been also, a little bit of a function of the wind directions. It's been good enough to where, if I get a wind out of, a certain direction, I can go to one area and catch fish. If it's blowing real hard, I've been able to get, in the rivers themselves and catch some fish. So, it's been good that way. Again, you're going to see some big changes by this time next week for sure, because they're going to really go into a full transition when we get these several nights of really cold weather this weekend.
Well, let's focus on the fundamentals a little bit. Is live bait vital right now, or can you get away with a day of just artificial fishing?
Yeah, you can get by with artificial bait just fine, and I've gotten bait and brought it when I've been able to get it very easily, which has been the case. They've been catching so many shrimp. It's really not a problem. It's really just a matter of how lazy I feel in the morning. Is if I feel like going by the bait shop and getting bait, as to whether or not I'm going to use it. If you can't get it or don't like to use it, you can get by without it. That's probably going to even be more the case as some of this bait gets flushed out of here with this cold weather and some of this rain that we're getting. The less bait that there is, the more apt the fish are to hit something fake. In the day that I was telling you about when I blew out that swarm of shrimp, we were using all artificial bait and still catching plenty of fish, So, it seems to help a little bit more with the redfish sometimes than it does the trout this time of year. But again, I don't plan my trip or cancel a trip because I can't get live bait. I can tell you that for sure.
All right. Next fundamental question is water quality, water conditions. We've had about 2 inches of local rain, which is that's gonna stain up those tributaries pretty good. But what about the delta? Is this stuff coming down the rivers and blowing the delta out?
It's we're gonna have a pretty good bubble coming down. We had one from the last slug of rain we got. If you keep up with the river stages, I look at the Tom Bigby, and the big barometer is Berry Steam Plant. That's kind of where it all comes together. If you look at the pool at Berry Steam Plant, you've seen some fluctuations in that, but even more so, the Alabama and the Tom Bigby rivers had big bubbles on them from that last slug that are finally going down. And then now we're getting ready to get another big slug of it. So you're going to have a lot of water coming down here in the next week or so. And the timing on it just could be is terrible because a lot of that data I was talking about is right at the mouths of the rivers. Some of that stuff moves out of here. That causes those fish to kind of move up in the delta. There's a lot of shrimp up in the delta. That's going to get flushed out too. But I'm hoping the salinity is not so low that the fish won't move up in those rivers and in those flats up north of the delta. That's when it really gets fun. And then we get the cold weather. They gather in the river channels. And that's when it's really, really fun. You're going down there and jigging for them and that sort of thing. I just hope that happens because we missed it last year.
You throwing the slick lure in yet?
Not yet, but man, I'll tell you, this weekend's I got them tied on, and I've thrown them a little bit.
We're almost there, and then this rain's going to mess us up.
We're almost there. This weekend, Butch. I think by this weekend and into next week, you're going to really get into slick time. When it gets cold like this is when they really, and that's another thing that's a product of some of the shrimp getting out of them. These fish get off that shrimp and the shrimp's not available. They're going to be a lot more apt to hit a finfish imitation, which is what that lure is, obviously. And so, that's another thing that's going to happen. That lure works year round, but when anytime it's artificial bait season, which is really fall, winter, and spring, as you well know, you're not going to beat that lure throwing it in front of a nice sized trout. So I to answer your question, I've used it some, but it's still been mainly a shrimp deal and a popping cork deal, either a live or a fake shrimp. But they're tied onto my rods. I can tell you that. Every day I'm going and throwing them just a little bit, but they're going to get to the point where corks are going to start getting cut off, and they're going to be more and more slicks tied on as it gets colder.
Bobby, we've got a real strong front pushing in this week. North winds are going to be upwards of 15 miles an hour, which means we're going to have gusts over 20. A really strong front. We're going to see almost a 40-degree temperature fluctuation in about 24-hour period.
It's going to have to blow like.
And that's a very strong front coming through. What do you do to salvage a day when you have to go fishing pretty much unless the crew decides they don't want to go? If somebody's they're dead set on going, what do? Do you look for cover? Especially right now, you got a lot of things going against you. You got a lot of water coming down in the Delta, which is going to muddy the water up. You got a lot of local
fresh
rain.
water. So the rivers are tough.
Make those rivers tannic. What do we do?
Well, the first thing I do is I call my local bowling alley to see if I can get a reservation for a lane. No, man, you answer the question. The only thing you can do when it blows that hard, and you really have to get out of it, not only, you got to be able to get out of it just to present the bait. I mean, there's no way you can present a bait properly when it's blowing. You're out in a 25 knot wind. And on top of that, it's hard for you to fish because you start fishing in 45 degree weather with a 20 knot wind. You guys have been out in it. I mean, you know what it's like. You just can't even function. So first thing you got to do is you got to get out of it, which means finding, like you just said, covered, protected areas. And we have a number of the river systems that we have. You mentioned the Delta. There's, you got Foul, Dog, and Alabama on the west side, and then on the east side, of course, Fish Magnolia, that area there. And those are the kind of places you have to get into, and then, but that sometimes, like this weekend, you're going to be right behind, like you just said, several inches of rain. You're going to have to deal with that too. So fortunately, a couple of the rivers, Foul is not one of them, but a couple of the rivers drain fairly quickly. A couple tide changes, and you get fishable water. And the fish really don't leave. They don't get flushed out of there like we think. So, what you have to do is you got to get protected water, and you got to look for some places to where the fresh water that's draining out, that you're not in the main current channels. You're going to have some of the flats, for example. They're out of the main flow of that fresh water. That's where the fish are going to be, if you're going to fish. So, it basically boils down to like a weekend like this. If you want to go fishing, you're going to have to do something like that, and you're going to have to adjust your expectations a little bit. I mean, it's going to be tough this weekend. It's going to be tough for sure tomorrow. I mean, not tomorrow, but Friday. It's going to be really tough. Saturday might have some potential. It's supposed to back off a little bit and then start blowing again on Sunday, So that's the other thing I would do if you're going to fish. I'd probably give it a try Saturday, which is when that Spanish Fort, the SPEEF tournament stands for Spanish Fort Education Enrichment Foundation tournament is Saturday is their March Madness tournament.
Tell us about that tournament, Bobby.
Yeah,
man, it's a great tournament. It's as of course, the name suggests that they're raising money for the schools over in the Spanish Fort area, and the businesses in that area really contribute well to it. They have the best prizes. I mean, the prizes are phenomenal. You can check them out at their. You can probably pull it up on their Facebook page. It's their March Madness tournament, or look it up on the internet. But the prizes are phenomenal, and it's trout, redfish, bass, flounder, just inshore species. So you don't have to worry about having to get out in the big water if it's flowing. And if you're going to be fishing, why not? I think the entry fee is like $25 or $50 or something. Why not put up a little bit of money for the kids and take a chance if you luck into a big flounder maybe, or which for me would be really lucky, but, or a redfish, which we've done too. I was just talking about that, on our trout trips. We've had almost every day we've caught at least a couple fish that I would go, God, I'd love to catch that one in the tournament, So,
oh yeah,
if you're going to be out there fishing, put up a little bit of money. You never know, man. Win some cash, Yeti ice chest, good stuff.
Good cause. Good. You can look it up.
Good cause. Yeah.
SPEEF.
SPEEF. SFEEF. Yeah, SFEEF March Madness.
Yeah, SPEEF March Madness. Check them out on Facebook. They've got a looks like
fall
a cool tournament coming up. All right, Bobby. Sounds like you might be the deputy of Dog River this weekend. We
I'm writing all these names down.
You got the Hey Capt question this week, and this week is brought to us by Foster Contracting. And the recent thunderstorms that have been producing wind and hail in the area may have damaged your home's roof. The certified roofing pros at Foster Contracting offer free roof inspections, and if your roof has received damage, most homeowners will have little or no cost out of pocket when going through your insurance. If you're looking for a quality construction with a dependable, licensed, and certified fortified roofing professional, give the Fortified Roofing Pros a call at 251-973-9999. They're a family-owned business that is big enough to get the job done, but small enough to care. Remember to support the local businesses that make your local podcast possible, and check them out at fortifiedroofingpros.com. All right, Bobby. Daniel Tidwell asks, he says, first of all, thank you so much for the show. The info is incredibly practical, and y'all keep every single episode chock full of fresh tips, just like this one we're about to give. He says, while I fish in Wolf Bay and Orange Beach often, I do more fishing over in the Destin area, Choctawhatchee Bay area. The water coming through the pass over there is at times pretty clear. 15 feet of visibility is not abnormal. Water in the bay can be pretty clear as well. What different tactics, bait, presentation should I change up when fishing in high visibility water? What do you think, Bobby? We don't see a whole lot of that in our system.
No, we don't. When he talks about 15 foot of visibility, like we talk about here, 3 feet of visibility, that's too clear for me to fish,
Yeah.
But, he's got a point. When you start fishing really super clear water like that, man, to me, that's as tough a condition, equally as tough as fishing really muddy water. And you have to just make some adjustments for the clear water stuff is, the first thing you got to do is you got to downsize at least your line and sometimes your lure too. Those fish, when we can see through the water, they can see way, way, way better than us. And when we can see that far in the water, you can bet they can see. So anything that looks unnatural to them is going to turn them off. So you got to go down. For example, here I'm using the lightest leader I use here is 15-pound test fluorocarbon. Most of the time I'm using 20. If I were you, I'd go down to at least 10. Use some fluorocarbon. You can get away with that light of leader if you're using fluorocarbon leader material now. And the other thing you're going to have to do is the Florida guys used to tell us when we were on the redfish tour, the saying was that if you can see the fish, you can't catch them, which basically means you're just too close to them, So you've got to stay off of those fish. And so I would make adjustments to your tackle to where you can really make really long casts, so you're getting your bait, out there and starting to work and present it before you're too close to the fish, to spook them, and then lastly, the other thing too is unfortunately is that kind of condition, you're going to be doing your best. And this kind of goes back to them, knowing you're there is, that's low light condition fishing. You are going to do by far your best, early in the morning, right at daybreak, and then late in the evening at dusk, or on days, where you've got a lot of cloud cover. That's going to be your best bet. And the only other thing you can do too is, on that subject is, try and fish maybe some of the windward areas of the bay, those bays. The Choctawhatchee is a pretty big bay. Stay on the windward side. That surface breaks up a little bit. You don't want to be fishing mirror slick water when it's that calm too, So that's just a couple tips I'd give you for fishing super clear water like that. And those are really tough conditions. I feel for you having to do it, man, because I know, the times we've had to go down to Florida and fish tournaments. I mean, we sound like a train wreck in the boat, even when we think we're being quiet and that's just not conducive for catching those spooky clear water fish like that. So, you learn how to be quiet. That's why those Florida fishing guys all fish barefooted and all that other stuff, So, even when it's freezing cold, they're barefooted.
I know the fluorocarbon's really important. Do you have a specific brand of fluorocarbon that you prefer?
I do. Well, I use the Berkeley professional grade fluorocarbon line, and they make a leader, both of them same name, but the leader material is a little different than line. You need to use both. And I'm just a fluorocarbon nut. I use it for anything that doesn't float. I'm using fluorocarbon for. So that's the brand that I use. And there's a number. I wouldn't. It's expensive. It's an expensive product, but and there's some cheap products out there. I wouldn't skimp on that stuff. I'd go ahead and stay with the name brands.
For sure.
Berkeley's, the Suffixes. You guys probably know some of the others, but I'd stay with those name brands. Go ahead and spend a little bit extra money and be cheap with your leaders. I don't have a bit of problem. If I had to make a longer leader, I can splice a piece into it if I need to, So we're getting back to our knot question that we had a few weeks ago. But
that's right.
We learned a new one. We learned a new one last week, Bobby. We learned the Huffnagel.
Huffnagel.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one. I've seen it.
I think it's fly fishing primarily.
Yeah.
So, Bobby, you were talking about these. You're talking about this leader material, and one of the questions I always have when fishing in clear water like that. My brother lives down in Tampa, and so we've done a good bit of fishing all.
Oh yeah, you've done your share of clear water.
Yeah, and literally he lives just north of Clearwater. So look at the name. But anyway, what I always struggle with is how long to make that leader on the inshore side of things, because in the offshore game, we'll go sometimes depending on the bite, we'll go as long as 15, 20-foot leaders
18 feet,
to get that bait away from that terminal tackle as much as we can.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking on the inshore side, does it matter that much? And also, does braid matter? Because braid, you can really see braid a lot better in clear water.
For sure. Yeah. If you're using braid, you've got to have you have to have a leader without question. You have to have it on there. And as far as length goes, 5 feet is an extremely long leader for me. If I'm using braid, if I was in those situation there, like where you're talking about down there, I would be looking at least 5 feet of leader. I don't use nearly that much here because the only reason I don't use it because our fish are line shy here. We don't have a bit of problem with that here. I use it mainly for the abrasion resistance, the shock resistance, the strength of the line. Of the leader. But 5 feet is plenty of leader. You got your lures are pretty good ways away from your braid, from your knot. You're going knot to the leader to where they're not going to see it. 5 feet's plenty. You start going way up in there. Now you're talking about reeling your leader on into your reel, which is going to affect your casting distance, and then again, getting back to our knot thing, when you start even making a 5-foot leader, you're still going to be reeling your knot up into your guides, your rod, which is going to affect your casting distance. So you better come up with a knot that's really small that goes through your guides really well, But here I'm using, 3 feet is what I start at, and sometimes I'll end up as I've cut it off a couple times with an 18-inch leader, And the other reason I use it here, and this is like a last reason, but is, when you get hung up, especially when we're jig fishing or something, and you get hung up, if you got braid straight to your line, chances are you might lose your whole spool of line before you could break it, So you want to have a breaking point, and there's something that can break off, and it'll always either break at the knot, one of the knots, the knot to the lure, the knot where you've tied it on, So, but I would think anything more than 5, you're going to probably you get these diminishing returns to where you're going to give up some casting distance, and you're going to be making noise with that knot going through your line and so forth.
That's a great question, Daniel. We appreciate that. Daniel submitted that Hey Cap question at Alabama at bestfishingreport.com. We have some good Fishbites goodies. Make sure you send us an email, Daniel, with your address to claim that prize.
And I understand that them things have been working pretty good for you too, Butch, on some redfish, huh?
That's right.
Them Fishbites.
I've been utilizing my Hey Cap package. I've been doing well.
Where do you go? Where do you go? Like a pack for me, a pack for the listeners, a pack for me.
That's right.
Every Hey Cap question, Butch gives himself a pack of Fishbites.
Hey, y'all don't worry about that.
He's a stand-up guy, Bobby.
That's right. He wants to make sure the stuff we're handing out and promoting is good stuff. Isn't that right, Butch?
You got to try the product, man.
You got to. Yeah, you won't believe in it if you don't.
That's right. Well, which actually brings me to my question. We talked about clear water. I know the water is not clear right now where I'm fishing. It's be pretty black with this tannic and all the rainwater we've had recently. On the opposite side of that spectrum, what are some things you can do in super not clear water to optimize your chances?
Yeah, which is actually what we're going to be, like you just said, we're going to be dealing with for a little while. And I deal with that a lot more. And one of the things I do, what you want to do when you start dealing with off-colored water like this is you've got to do something to get the fish closer to the bait. And so that involves, appealing to some other senses that the fish have. We were talking about with the clear water situation with the fish being able to see the bait. You don't have to worry about it. He's going to see the bait from a long ways away, so you really don't want him. You don't need to be making extra noise. You don't need to be putting scent on there. If you start dealing with what we're dealing with now and what we deal with quite often is you're going to want to appeal to some extra senses to help the fish find that bait. And that's things like popping corks, where you make some noise and get that fish closer to the bait, get his interest to where you're bringing him in closer to the bait. Top water plugs, things that make some noise on the surface. I brought a popping cork to a skeeter photo shoot a couple of years ago. Matter of fact, down in the area where that fellow that just asked our question, I brought it down. I thought those guides down there, when they told us we had to go catch some fish for the photo shoot, and I had popping corks tied on my rod. I thought those guys were going to heart attack. They said, "Man, you got to cut those things off. They make too much noise." I was like, "Well, I don't know how to catch them without a popping cork." But so one, you're making some noise, and then two, we were talking about scents. The other thing you can do is really scent up your bait. I use Gulp. Which is scent. The lure is actually made from the scent, so it gives off a tremendous amount of scent. Or you can use the Apply, the fish sticks or the Procure, or Fishbites is a great product. We put a little piece of that stuff. We cut little pieces of it, put it on our lures to add some scent. That Fishbite really, that stuff's working, because after about 10 casts with it, we'll cut a little square of it off and put it on the hook. And after about 10 or 15 casts, it's not all the scent's gone from it, so that's dispersing a lot of scent. Right. So that's just some of the things you can do to deal with off-colored water to help the fish find the bait.
Bobby, I promise this is the last question, but, so you're talking about doing things to appeal to their senses. One of the things that we used to notice very regularly when we were fishing, when Butch and I were charter fishing, was that when we would pull up offshore on a bottom spot, if we had 20, 30 people on the boat and we dropped down, all that bait in the water would trigger bites. So we could pull up next to people who were fishing on boats with, 3 to 6 people, and they were catching nothing. We would pull up and start immediately catching fish, because all that bait in the water kind of stimulated them. It's almost like chum in a way. Mm-hmm. Do you find that you catch more fish or attract more fish the more people you have on the boat? I mean, is that a tactic to have more people with just gear in the water when the water's muddy?
Well, it's not so much. I don't think it's as much as having baits in the water. The advantage of having the extra people on the boat to me is it lets me do a couple things different. Maybe instead of just being by myself, one other person. I might fish a couple different depths. I might even have two guys throwing a popping cork and two of us throwing a slick and a top water.
Just covering a lot more ground at that point.
Covering a lot more water. Yeah. But one of the things I was thinking about, though, when you were talking about that, and it's not so much this time of year where you're doing, flats fishing and river channel fishing and that sort of thing, but when you're fishing structure like we do in the bay, I mean, during the summer when we fish the bay and the sound and the structure, I've seen it happen many, 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 many times. If you can just get one fish to bite, if you can get one, they're there because they're living on that structure, until the conditions change. So they're there. So if you can get, and I tell them that, I'll say, guys, if we can just get one bite, that seems to set the whole thing off. So it's kind of similar to what you're talking about there, just trying to get a bite or two. And it just seems like it all starts building on itself. If you can just get them going, the fish, we're doing whatever he's doing down there, triggering the bite or whatever, it gets everything going.
Releases.
Yep, just get it fired off. Yep.
Endorphins.
And let that be a lesson. Keeping up with the Joneses. See what that gets you.
That's right.
All right, Capt, Bobby. As always, man, great report. Good. We covered a lot of ground, and man, all the way from the Delta on down to the Mississippi Sound. Sounds like it's going to be a tough weekend, but we appreciate you shedding a little light on what we can do with these challenging conditions.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll keep our fingers crossed. I don't think it's the end of the deal. I just, I think, if this will just get on through here and get out of here, and give us a few days with no, any amount of rain, I think we're going to be okay for the rest of the winter. It just was, the timing was so bad with everything being where it was supposed to be when we get this big deluge of rain, So we'll keep our fingers crossed. I think we're going to be all right.
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little nervous. Last winter was rough with all the rain, and it kind of messed everything up. I'm a little nervous. It's a nervous start for me.
Hey, brother, I'm with you. Brother. I am too. I got to think. My wife, thank goodness, is the real positive influence on me, because I walk around and worry and fret and rub my hand, worrying myself to death. She's and most times she's right, and she doesn't even hardly fish. So it's a positive attitude.
Can totally relate to that. My wife and my relationship is pretty much the same exact thing. I'm the worrywart, and she's the, hey, calm down. It's all right. It's all right.
Everything's going to be all right. Yeah. Right. And it usually is.
Yeah. If anybody wants to book a trip with you, you probably got some open dates. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
ateamfishing.com is the easiest way. It's got our phone number on the Contact Us tab, and it's got a Contact Us form you can fill out. And speaking of wives, she'll get you. She's way more organized than I was. So I promise you, if you call and get her, you're in good hands. I can tell you, she'll take care of it. I'll screw it up so she keeps me away from the bookings.
I understand that as well. Well, keep whacking them, Capt, Bobby. We appreciate you as usual.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Y'all have a good weekend.
Well, Butch, yes, I think I'm going to go hunting this weekend based on that inshore prognosis.
It's going to be tough for a couple of days, man. It's going to be a really weird weather pattern here. I think the high on Friday, I'm not sure if I said it earlier or not, but the high on Friday is like 61 or something.
Yeah.
It's going to be super cold. So it's got to blow its face off for a couple of days. It's going to be super cold on Friday, Saturday, and then it's going to be interesting to see what this rain does, man, to our local.
I'm with you though. I'm nervous about it because fall fishing in the rivers. I grew up on Foul River. You live on Foul River now, and fall fishing in Foul River, Dog River, and all the estuaries that feed Mobile Bay is one of my top 5 favorite things to do in the outdoors. You know, throw on some jeans and a hoodie and go hit the river and catch some speckled trout in the cool temperatures. And I really don't like it when it gets messed up by rain. So I don't know.
We'll see, man. Hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully this will be the last little spell that'll come through, and that'll be great for the rest of the winter. Let's bank on that.
Well, where are we going to round this thing out?
Well, we got one more left, man. Let's go onshore. Let's see what the Bama Beach Bums been up to. How we doing, Mathew?
What's going on, guys? Man, it's been fun. We finally got some big quality fish in the area, and we've been catching some bull reds and some big black drum, and man, it's been fun. It's been interesting. Slow. It's not like hot and heavy catching fish after fish, but the fish that we are hooking up on, they definitely have been quality, which I'm good with that. It was nice for the change.
Mathew, you starting to hear a lot more Wisconsin accents down on the beach?
Flocking south.
Not quite yet, but we are close, and they're probably there. But I haven't been fishing as much here lately. But you're absolutely right. We're about to be inundated with a lot of our northern friends, and they do like to fish the beach, and I've befriended many of them, and looking forward to hanging out with some of my old friends from last year.
Yeah, it's always good to see our friends come from up north this time of year and tell us how we're all wusses for thinking that it's cold.
They're out there waiting in shorts in December.
I know.
Swimming.
I know. It's how it is, and I complain the most about it. But in our defense, we do have a very, very wet, windy cold. So like 40 degrees does feel a lot colder probably than it does up there. I mean, because that breeze off the water is just it's brutal. It's pretty chilly.
A bunch of eyes just rolled, Mathew.
Yeah. I know. There's no wind in here.
So bull reds, tell us about that.
Yeah, they are mainly concentrated. Like we can catch them. You can catch them anywhere on any beach. They're running. They're here, but they are congregated. You're going to have more success if you can find a spot at the passes and inlets. And the reason I say that, it's definitely no secret. It's like fishing the pier. You're going to have a lot of folks there, and if you want to get your primo spot, you're going to have to get there early. Wherever you decide to go fish. So, and just be courteous to each other, try to give each other space, but it is a little tighter quarters in a lot of those areas where those redfish are concentrated. So it's going to be very similar to pier fishing in that regard. But you can find any random stretch of beach. It's just going to be a lot slower. You won't hook them as guaranteed as you will in those passes and inlets, because that seems to be where they are congregated. But we're using primarily cut baits right now, and they're hitting anything. Really, the main ones that we've had success with is your cut mullet and whiting. I really like using whiting just because drum species like to eat other drum species. And our biggest redfish that we've caught here lately was on a whiting head, and that was a 41 incher a couple days ago. So that was pretty cool to see. But you can use really anything as long as it's fresh. Highly recommend getting it fresh. Anything frozen, it doesn't stay on the hook very well. They don't seem to last as long out there. Just kind of turns to mush and falls off. Honestly, I haven't caught anything with our frozen baits, and I don't know if that's just because it's not lasting out there or if the fish aren't turning them out. I don't know. But if you can get fresh, it's definitely going to be more successful for you.
You guys seen any pompano, Mathew? I know we are kind of looking for those lower water temperatures a little bit. Are y'all seeing any pompano? And what is the ideal water temperature that you're looking for those pompano this time of year?
Yeah, we're seeing a few. We caught one in the last 2 days, I think, that was legal. We've been catching some small ones as well, but we caught one that was like right at 16 inches. And I think the last time I looked, water temperatures were like 74, 75 degrees. So we're getting close. We're getting real close. Really like to see that water temperature get to about that 68 degree mark. For our fall, quote unquote, run that we get for pompano, it's definitely not as long or as numerous as we do in the springtime, but it is definitely a better time to catch pompano than what we have seen here the last couple of months. We had a great run through the spring all the way through summer. We were catching pompano really consistently through August, and then it's kind of slowed off and slacked up September and October. Generally, it kind of stayed warm for longer than usual, so I think it kind of backed things up for us, getting these water temps lower. I think usually by mid-October, we're seeing a better showing for pompano, which right now we're not catching very many. They're always there, but just not in any numbers right now. But I think once we get in that low 70s, closer to that 68-degree mark, I think we're going to start seeing better numbers and more consistent pompano being caught. And so I think November here, I think we will have a pretty good November and December with pompano would be my projection.
Talking about back to drum a little bit, if we are going to target them from the surf, we're not going to go pass fishing. Are they at all stages, or do you need to bomb that cast? Are you seeing any kind of pattern?
The most consistent area that I've found personally is not, you want to be like depending on where you're fishing, because again, we talked about this each beach is different. So some beaches you can cast to the back side of the bar, Gulf side of the bar. Other beaches you can't, that bar is too far out. I will say if you're fishing any random stretch of beach, try to find a beach that bar structure is closer to you, so that you can put it on just the back side of it, not a bomb cast, because it's really hard to bomb a cut bait anyway, because it's a heavier bait than like a pompano rig with a piece of shrimp or a fish bite that you can launch out there. And especially if you're using a Carolina rig, usually you're not going to be able to cast that as far either. And we can get into some of that too. Rigging can be beneficial one way or the other depending on what you're doing. But if you're using a Carolina rig, you're not going to be able to cast that as far. So, but really the just back side of the bar, not in the deeper blue pocket where it drops off, but like just that back edge, they seem to really be cruising almost on the bar in most of the cases where I found baits that I put too far out, we seem to be missing them. But the baits that we put just on the back edge of that bar where they're kind of cruising seems to be the best spot for them.
Mathew, we were talking with Bobby Abruscato a little earlier in the show and trying to drill down into what to do when we have this really strong front coming through Thursday night, Friday morning. You're talking about a 24-hour period where you're going to see a temperature swing somewhere between 30 and 40 degrees, which means you're going to have a really strong north wind, 15 to 20 miles an hour, gusting higher than that. What do you see in the surf when you've got a really strong front? Not necessarily a north wind. We talked about that in the past, but when you see a really strong front moving in, how do you change your plan?
The most consistent thing that I'm fishing as much as I have, because I've been guiding the last 2 years, with any cold front we get, after that front moves through, that first 48 to 72 hours is just terrible fishing. Whatever time of year we're in, usually we're getting these obviously in the fall and in the spring. It just really shuts things off. So whatever pattern we're in, what we're seeing right now, that'll last pretty much leading up to the front, generally what we'll see. And then after that front, it's going to shut off and we're going to get a new pattern. Something's going to be different after that 48 to 72 hours when the fishing starts to actually kind of come back around. Baits may be different. Where the fish are hanging may be it always seems to change something. Like what we're doing, we got to change something up to catch fish again. But in that time period, I usually try to avoid it if I can. When I'm running trips, I usually say, hey, look, we got this cold front coming through, high pressure system. Let's try to find a day as far away from that as we can, because it just pretty consistently it's terrible. Now, I'm not ever going to tell you don't go fishing. Number one, it sounds pretty miserable on the beach if the wind's blowing that much from the north and that temperature's that low. I wouldn't want to be out there in the first place just because I'm a wuss. But number two, I would highly anticipate it being extremely slow fishing. So probably not worth freezing your tail off to stand on the beach to stare at rods for hours on end. You might catch something, but it's probably going to be pretty difficult. So that would be my guess. Been wrong before, but pretty consistently those high pressure cold front systems, it's just junk for 48 to 72 hours. After that, it's fun fishing because usually fish are biting, and it is kind of a figure out stage again of figuring out what's going to be key, what bait, where these fish are, what they want, everything. But we'll wait until after that front moves through and give it some time.
That sounds like a logical decision, Mathew. We appreciate that.
Yeah, don't freeze your butt off. It's
That's
not
right.
worth it. Don't do it.
Don't get frostbite.
That's right. That's right.
All right, man. Well, that brings us to our onshore tip, and this week's tip is brought to us by KillerDock. You know, Joe, I've lived on or near the water my whole life, and in that time, I've learned that not all docks are the same. I mean, I started out with a small dock, and now I've got a big one. So big, in fact, that there are parts of my dock that I don't even really use. I've got this one area of my dock that is pretty much good for nothing. No one was even enjoying that portion. So when I saw the fish cleaning stations that KillerDock crafts right here in the United States of America, I knew that was just the right dock enhancement that I needed. Now being on my dock is enjoyable again. No matter what size dock you have, KillerDock has a dock enhancement that is right for you. Check out the best fish cleaning stations known to mankind at KillerDock.com. What you got for a tip this week, Matt?
With using cut baits, since we're using it for these big redfish and even the black drum, we've caught some on that, which is a little unusual. Usually Fishbites just gets those guys and not so much on cut baits. But one of the things when I'm taking folks fishing that I see and that doesn't seem to be common knowledge is you really got to let that fish eat that bait. You want to give it time before you grab that rod and start trying to do anything with it. You want to make sure that fish is really, gotten that bait down in its mouth and taking it before you start trying to fight that fish or do anything with it. Of course, that is going to vary based on what style of hook you use. I do highly recommend circle hooks. Just, it's better for the fish. Hookup ratios are very good with circle hooks. I know a lot of guys are anti that, but especially if you're using circle hooks, you've got to give that fish time to eat. You're only going to make it worse if you try to get there quicker. So give that fish time. Usually it takes, sometimes 10 to 15 seconds before you really need to do anything. Of course, if that fish hits and runs out, it takes a second to take that bait. You want to make sure that rod bends over really good, that line's peeling out, which I always set my drag fairly loose every time I put that rod in the rod holder. I want to make sure that drag's loose enough because, we're fishing for big fish here and we want to make sure they take that bait, don't break a rod or pop a rig or anything like that. But you really want to give that fish time to eat that bait before you start trying to set that hook, whether that be a circle hook or a J hook. Another thing that we've talked about before to make sure you don't lose any equipment, because this is the time of year you're going to do it. When you're putting your sand spikes in, it is always best to put those sand spikes in east to west. If you're not using a mallet or anything like that, when you're jiggling it into the sand, make sure you're going east to west, not north and south, because that way you're at least loosening the sand in the direction that the fish is not running. Because if you put it north and south, of course, you're just loosening up that sand in the direction that the fish is going to pull that rod. So give them time, let them eat, and you'll get hooked up on those fish a lot better.
Mathew, that's a great tip. When you said that tip the first time regarding putting those sand spikes in east to west, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I love really simple tips that people can apply immediately that are everyday relevant. Because I used to stand at the edge of the high water mark. I use PVC for my stakes, and I'd put it in. I'd be staring at the water, and I'm just jiggling it north and south, working it down, And you're exactly right. You hook one of those big black drum or red drum, and all of a sudden, bam, there goes your rod. And luckily, I haven't ever lost a rod, but I have seen a few get tumped over, and had to make a quick sprint to get them. So yeah, working it east and west, that's good. And I really appreciate those tips about tightening the drag when you cast, loosening it when it's in the rod holder, and then getting it just right when you got the fish on. That's really smart. Thanks again for being with us today, man. We always enjoy having you on. We'll be looking forward to checking back in with you again soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks, guys.
Another good report, Butch. I want to back up a little bit, though, man. Your dock's not really that big.
It's not, but actually...
I mean, it's a nice dock. I'll give it to you. It's good sized, but it's not.
It is, but that ad is actually perfect for the setup on my dock. I have a huge portion of my dock, but I like to hang out on my dock. I like for people to hang out right there. And I have a skinny portion.
Yeah.
That's not really used for much at all. That goes down the side, and that's where we decided to put my KillerDock because it takes up zero dock space.
Yep. Besides,
you can make fun of my dock all you want, but
besides the fact that your dock is just average size, what did you learn today?
I thought it was really cool what Captain Devin was saying about the circle hook versus J hook versus, or not necessarily versus, but based upon your expertise level and your setup. I mean, if you're on a center console boat, you're not going to be able to see a quarter of what you can see on the, on the tower of the 65-foot escape. And using a J hook on a center console boat where you can't see is going to really increase your production.
Your hookup, right?
As opposed if you're up in that, tower that's 30 feet tall, you can see all your spread, and you're going to be able to see a marlin coming up and go, hey, right flat, there's a marlin coming up. And the mate can run over there and get ready and put the reel in free spool and not be beat to the rod, is what Devin was saying. You don't want the fish to beat you to the rod.
It's not just visibility too. It's like you were saying, it's experience, because sure. I remember, most of the time I spent in blue water was on the deck because I was a deckhand. But as I got a little bit older and got to go a little bit more, I started to get to be in the tower every once in a while when we were, trolling a spread. And I remember though, but the first few times I was in the tower, the captain would be like, "There's a blue marlin," or there's a marlin, or there's a dolphin, and they would see them, and they'd see that old black shadow coming up right behind that bait, and they knew 100%. And I'd look out there and I didn't see anything because my eyes didn't know what to look for yet.
Trained eye. That's the same thing with
cobia fishing, same thing.
I was just about to say cobia and triple tail. You'll get second guess yourself 100 times, but when you see one, you see one because your eyes trained for it.
Right. And, it's not just necessarily tower versus not tower, but it could just be if you've got inexperienced fishermen, which you would say, anybody running a boat in blue water is not inexperienced, but it's not necessarily true. A lot of people are just getting into it, and, J hooks can help that hookup ratio.
Even bad conditions. If it's super cloudy and you can't see down in the water, you're probably not going to want to run, all super hooks.
Yeah. I like that. And I really like what he said too about how to play it once you got the bite. Cause I was joking around, but I was being very serious. Actually, I struggled with that when I first started fishing in blue water, which was, what do I do? Okay, you bit the bait. What do I do? Do I reel? When you get a bite on a circle hook, you start reeling. It's not as intuitive as you would think when you're trolling.
It's a lot of feel and a lot of experience. I can remember going out and getting 3 bites and doing it one way and none of them working, and they'd be like, "All right, I'm gonna set the hook immediately." You know what I mean? Next time, and then it's just all feel, man.
Yeah,
some things are gonna work. Sometimes you just have to figure out what's gonna work best for your setup.
You know what I like? What he said aside from that was that he doesn't yell.
Right.
I just think
Quiet boat is a happy boat.
Calm down, Sure. It doesn't do it really. I get excited too, but it really doesn't do any good to holler. It all it does is
just frenzies everyone up.
Yeah, and people are dropping things and making dumb mistakes and bad casts, and
rushing around.
You can just say. And the other thing is, like, people are saying, "I love it." There he is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right. Okay, give me is he at 11 o'clock? Is he off the port stern? That's what I need to know.
Well, that goes back to a couple weeks ago with Chris Veche talking about the sight fishing deal.
Sure.
Have set up with your crew. All right, this is the left flat. This is the right flat. This is the right long rigger. This is the fly pole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a cool thing when you fish with a good captain, good crew, and you see how they communicate. And after a while, it just becomes nobody even talks. It's just like this is how we do it. This is what we do. So, yeah, man. It's been a good show. There's some challenges to this weekend's fishing, but if you can get out there, I feel like we've got a good game plan to catch some fish no matter what you're doing.
Me too, man. Me too.
All right, take us out of here.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the show this week. You guys, we've been getting a lot of good reviews over on iTunes. You guys go over to iTunes and go down to reviews and leave us a review. It really helps with the iTunes rankings. Support your local sponsors. That's a huge deal. We've been getting a lot of great feedback from our sponsors. You guys are doing awesome with that. They're the ones that bring you the show for free each week. If you'd like us to email you the podcast each week, head over to greatdaysoutdoors.com/ASFR, and we'll send it to you each week. What else, Joe?
Keep whacking them.
See y'all next week.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by Daycool Heating and Air, your home performance specialists. Contact them at 251-260-3858 or check them out online at www.daycoolair.com. License number AL07028. This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by Fishbites. Check out their full line of freshwater, saltwater, tackle, and apparel at fishbites.com.
Also brought to you by Geico. Call Ron Davis, Geico agent at 251-445-0053 or visit him online at geico.com/mobile-al.
This week's Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by Angelo Depaola, the Coastal Connection with EXP Realty, your boating and beach property specialist. Check me out on Facebook at Angelo Depaola Realtor, the Coastal Connection, or call me direct at 850-287-3440.
And also Great Days Outdoors, the South's finest hunting and fishing magazine. Pick up your copy wherever magazines are sold or check them out at greatdaysoutdoors.com.
Also brought to you by Coastal Conservation Association of Alabama. Check them out at CCAAlabama.org.